In 3 of the 4 gospel accounts, we find Jesus eating a meal with his disciples after his resurrection. Ironically, it is Matthew who omits this detail. His account of Jesus' post-resurrection appearances is tightly focused on the Great Commandment, presumably so we do not miss the importance of that final command. Like Mark, Luke has Jesus at table with the disciples in Jerusalem where he shares food with them. And Luke is careful to note the detail that Jesus actually ate the food. Why is that, do you suppose? Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, April 14th, 2023. Certain elements of Jesus' appearances after the resurrection seem common to most or all of the gospel accounts. One or more women, always including Mary Magdalene, were the first to discover the empty tomb and report it to the disciples. 3 of the accounts take note of 1 or 2 angels who appear to the women. 2 of the gospel accounts include a first appearance of Jesus to Mary Magdalene. All 4 include Jesus appearing to the 11 disciples, and 3 include some detail about his sharing a meal with the disciples, though they differ on the location of where that meal was, and only Luke says he actually ate anything. Mark and Luke place the meal in or near Jerusalem. John locates it on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Finally, all 4 include Jesus giving final instructions to 1 or all of the disciples. In today's reading from Luke, we pick up the story in the evening of that first day of the week, or if we're being faithful to the Jewish concept of when a new day begins, it is likely after sunset, making it technically Tuesday, the second day of the week. We guess this because the story included the detail that when the 2 minor followers met Jesus on the road to Emmaus, they invited him to stay with them because it was almost evening. Then, after they break bread with Jesus and they finally recognize him, he disappears, and they immediately get up and head back to Jerusalem where the disciples are gathered. When they arrived and told them what had happened, the disciples reported that Jesus had appeared to Peter, though the gospel writer doesn't tell us anything about that meeting. That's where we pick up the story. While they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you frightened, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. As mundane as this scene appears in some respects, besides the fact that Jesus simply appears among them, this is a really fascinating story. Notice 2 details here. First, Jesus responds to their fear of seeing him. Their fear, no doubt, arose from the idea that he might be some kind of disembodied spirit, but Jesus tells them otherwise. He invites them to look at his hands and feet, to see the places where the spikes had pierced his body on the cross. And then the really telling detail. "Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And the second detail, which provides a sort of living confirmation of this statement, Jesus asks them for something to eat. "Have you anything here to eat?" he says. They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. A very specific detail. Taken together, Luke wants to drive home the point that although Jesus could both appear and disappear from sight, it wasn't because he was a disembodied spirit, or, as is usually translated here, a ghost. The Greek word for spirit and ghost are one and the same, pneuma. No, he was physically present in the flesh. Perhaps more than any other of the gospel writers, Luke emphasizes this point. Indeed, when we get to John's account, we'll see a very different take on things. But for Luke, a physical bodily resurrection is critical for understanding just how earth-shaking the resurrection is. For it is the real, living Jesus who appears to the disciples, not a ghost, not a spirit, a real, living human being. Tomorrow, Jesus leaves his disciples, but not before giving them some instructions. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do, this day and in all the days ahead.